He's Andy.
That guy's Evan.
And this is Bad Watch.
I do want to note that this version of Andy that you're hearing is the stuffy version. This is the Andy on drugs.
Now, this is your Andy on drugs. Andy, what time of year is it?
Christmas?
No,
time?
wrong, false. It's the most horrible time of the year.
That too. Give me both.
Music. So, given that it is the most horrible time of the year, I had a brilliant plan for our December episodes of Bad Watch. Listeners, you can't see Andy, but not only is he recovering from a sinus infection given to him by his adorable child, he's rubbing his face and wishing that I were dead.
Heartily wish he was dead. I said that to him while we watched this. I said, I hate you, make it stop. All of those things were quotes that happened.
And I had the great idea that we should watch a Lifetime Christmas movie, which we'll get to in our next episode. Don't want to spoil that. Also, we haven't watched it yet, so we can't. But in this episode, we watched the already beloved Christmas film released by Netflix called The Princess Switch.
I hate you. If you Google it, you will find a cornucopia of terrible articles written about it.
Because that's the kind of discourse that this movie inspires. But you know what? We shall rise above.
No, we won't.
They go low. We just swim in it.
And we invite you to join us.
As Michelle Obama once said. So, typically we spend a long time recapping these movies, but so let's imagine for a second that the movie The Princess Diaries and the movie The Parent Trap were in a horrible car accident. and
mangled body parts everywhere.
And the movie doctors were like, we cannot separate these two films without compromising both of them.
But what we can do is rebuild it.
We can make one terrible film featuring Vanessa Hudgens in not one but two starring roles, and a creepy old man in not one but four
I think
supporting roles.
Four separate roles where he shows up everywhere. It's awful. I hate this movie.
So this movie stars Vanessa Hudgens as Stacy.
We did say the princess. Yeah, Princess Switch. Yeah, I just want to make sure. Princess Switch. Look it up and be sad.
And don't watch it. There is a pretty hilarious trailer you can watch on the interwebs. So Stacy DeNovo is in Chicago, which you can totally tell from the very limited shot of like State Street Bridge, the Marina City Towers,
the ice on the river Chicago.
Yeah, and then it cuts to
and
like
her Chicago hat,
like a temperate area in British Columbia. I'm pretty sure where she's just walking around, and she has a bake shop called Stacy's Sweets and Treats, or Stacy's Sweet Treats, something like that. Yeah. Sweet Treats. And she works there with a very handsome.
She owns it.
It's her shop. Her name's on the door.
Woman on the go.
She has a sous chef there who's very handsome, but she's really mean to him, and supposedly they're best friends since high school.
She has a sous chef who I don't know when he works, because you can tell all he does is work out. It's crazy.
Yeah, his body is completely hairless except for his head, and maybe that's a wig.
It's like the other guy's shaved. Shit.
And he's ripped and shredded like lettuce. Romaine lettuce, which don't eat because you will get sick. Probably. Throw it out. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You won't hear this for a couple weeks, but if you still have romaine, throw it out.
Yeah, if you still have romaine by the time this episode is released, just be safe, okay? Use protection, by which I mean don't eat salads. And so he has a daughter who I think is supposed to be 8, but is very clearly like 12 or 14.
Yeah, definitely.
She's supposed to be 8. which makes it awkward that she still believes in Santa because she's like too tall for a child to be believing in Santa. But she comes home from school, I guess, and goes into the bake shop, and she's like, Stacy, are there any sugar cookies left for your favorite goddaughter?
Yeah.
And so he's like,
they're setting up these relationships, right? And it's just, it feels unnatural, and nothing.
It is entirely unnatural.
Nothing flows, and it made me angry because I was like, you're doing this wrong. I don't know what you were supposed to do, but you did done it wrong.
And then the little girl, what's the little girl's name? Olivia?
I don't even know.
Olivia. I think, yeah, because they call her Liv. Let's call her Liv. Lippy Liv.
Young Liv Tyler of a different race.
Young African-American Liv Tyler. As we all know and love her. This was before Empire Records, her breakout role. Now, oh God. So she's like, Dad, did you give Stace the news? And he's like, and she's like, what news? I own a bake shop, but apparently I don't know anything that's going on in here. And he's like, well, you know that famous baking competition in the fictional country of Belgravia that you always talk about every year but never enter? When you were sad about your breakup with Paul, we entered you and we got invited. And she's like, oh. And then her dad, what's the dad's name? Andrew?
No, it's not. I'm sure it's not those. I don't know what it is. See, I just didn't care about any of these characters.
Let's call him Sexy Dad. Sexy Dad is like, Liv, why don't you take that cookie in the back room? Meanwhile, there's just still like a bunch of customers in the bake shop.
I actually almost commented on that, but there was someone helping the customers.
This is true.
I was like, you guys are just like hanging out. There's like 15 people waiting for you. I don't know what you.
They hired an extra to run the bake shop while they were having this very serious discussion.
I have to say, so Evan's been like explaining this, and we're facing each other over my microphone, and I have my arms crossed, and I was just cringing as he was telling these stories, and I was reliving the moment I viewed it. And I want you to know, the listener, you should not watch this movie.
I would also like to take this time to point out that my least favorite type of music is Christmas music. And frankly, that discussion is beyond the scope of this podcast, but I think this movie has inspired me to also say that my least favorite type of movie is Christmas movie. With the exception of like movies that take place at Christmas but aren't about Christmas, like your Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Oh, can we watch that?
I haven't seen Die Hard, but I've heard it's good.
You haven't seen Die Hard?
I have not seen Die Hard, but I know it's about John McClane and it's at Christmas.
Die Hard.
And I shot a kid. That's all. Those are all of my Die Hard.
That's all you need. You don't need.
Isn't Alan Rickman in that?
Yeah.
Hashtag R.I.P. Alan Rickman.
Yeah.
Rickman.
He's an excellent. He's the best bad guy.
Why are you in my building, John McClane? Get out of here!
He makes one of the
climbing
best
through the ducts. I'm Severus Snape.
You're a wizard, Harry. I don't think.
Get out of my building, John McClane.
But anyway, back to the shitty movie that I did see. So she's like, I can't just drop everything and go to Belgravia. And then he explains that they can because the prince will be there, which doesn't explain anything.
I was like, audibly, I just stopped. I was like, what? That doesn't mean you can, like, you have financial responsibilities. You have a store. What?
She's very clearly busy for the upcoming holidays. And she's like, well, this sucks.
Now that there's a prince, I guess
and then, go. So she leaves the bake shop. It's unclear why. It's the middle of the day. And I guess she doesn't have anything else to do there. Nope. She's like, well, the 8-year-old slave we have showed up, so I can clock off now.
I paid her an 8-year cookie.
And she's walking down a
legal tender.
I'm walking down a fake Chicago sidewalk with real fake snow, and there's a fake Salvation Army man who's ringing the quietest Salvation Army bell I think I've ever heard.
And this right here, I think, is where we start to hear the chimes.
Yeah.
Which we hear probably 40 to 50 times over the course of this movie.
If you had a dime for every time they did the obnoxious chimes in this film, I'd have like $4 or $5 easy.
It was a lot, and it stopped being like as a background thing and just started being a jarring moment.
Yeah.
Like, this is supposed to be magical, guys.
Yeah, and at first Andy was like really complaining about this, and I was not as sensitive to it because. So my job is to sort of pay attention to what happens in these movies, and Andy's job is to complain about watching these movies. And we were watching
great
this,
for me.
And as we kept going, I was like, "Wow, he's right. Those chimes are really fucking loud." And it was like, well, if we need to release this in time for Christmas, we can't pay that audio mixer that we wanted. So, just post. We'll fix it in post, even though this is post. I don't know. I'm Netflix. Goodbye. And the music throughout, especially the chimes, is like twice as loud as it needs to be, probably. Mm-hmm. And so she meets the old man Salvation Army person, and he says, "Oh, the holidays are a magical time." And she says,
"So already, this interaction is already far too long."
Yeah, it's like no Salvation Army. In my experience, the Salvation Army people don't want to talk to you. They don't want to be shaking the bell. They don't want to be standing outside in the cold. They probably still hate gay people, I'm guessing. Salvation Army, not great. But, okay. Also, let me back up for a second. We also learn that what's her name? Stacy? Dear God.
I remember that name.
Stacy has a troubled past because her boyfriend dumped her.
Oh, yeah. The darkness in her past.
The darkness in her past is that there's a man who broke her heart. I think his name is Paul.
It is Paul, and we meet him shortly after.
Yeah,
this
so
moment.
she is talking to.
She's talking for way too long
to
to
Salvation Army guy. And he's
Salvation Army eyebrow man,
and she says, "I just wish I had someone to spend it with." He's like, "Christmas wishes have a way of coming true."
Cue chimes.
Cue chimes again already. Don't drink every time you hear the chimes in this film. You will die. Like that's a serious bad watch parental advisory. Do not play a drinking game with the chimes and the Princess Switch. It's very dangerous. So then she keeps walking, another yard down this fake sidewalk, and who does she see walking out of a nondescript storefront? Fucking Paul. That's right. And she's like, "Fucking Paul, what the fuck, Paul? You broke my heart, Paul."
That wasn't
and he's
quite
like,
the interaction.
And he's like, "Oh, hey, Stacy. What's up, Stace?" And then out of the nondescript storefront comes another woman who probably auditioned for the lead role and didn't get it. And so she's like, "Hey, babe." And she and Paul kiss.
Smooches.
Uh-oh. And Stacy's like, "Well, fuck this bitch."
I have to say, I like Evan's version of this movie quite a lot better. And I'm
this
pretty
is-
sure there would be no chimes in his version.
We are punching it up, ladies and gentlemen, because that's the only way I'm going to get through this recap. And she's like, "Who's this slut?" And he's like, "Oh, Stacy and I kind of dated for a while." And she's like, "Yeah, I'm sure Paul mentioned me." And she's like, "Actually, no." And Stacy's like, "I'll cut a bitch." And then she turns around and walks past the old man, and he says something else cryptic and whimsical and dumb.
Well, no, she goes, "What are you doing for Christmas?" And
and they're doing the parent meet and greet over the
so
holidays.
So she's like, "Well, I need to one up. I need to show them." And so
I'm missing a major plot point. That's right.
I've got plans too, huge plans. And they're like, "Well, what are they?" And she's like, "Well, I'm going to Belgravia to compete in a cooking competition because I'm the shit, and I have to go pack in my really big suitcase, and now I have to say something in a southern accent for some weird reason."
She does specifically mention her very big suitcase.
And she said she goes from a sort of just Midwestern accent to "my very large suitcase," and it's like
My very large suitcase. You know what? She hit up our sponsors, Accenture.
they're everywhere.
So she goes back to the store and she's like, "Fuck it, I'm going to Belgravia, bitches." And then
Fun made up country.
Smash cut to Belgravia, which I think is just Canada in disguise, I'm pretty sure. But somehow it's a weird part of Canada where instead of speaking French, they all have British accents.
Everyone's British. I guess that just means foreign in American TV. Thank you, Netflix.
Thank you, Netflix, for your xenophobia. It's great. And chimes.
It did just make it very easy that there wasn't a language barrier at all. So I did appreciate that.
I wouldn't. I'm totally down with watching stuff with subtitles. I would have not made it through. I would have pasted up paper on the bottom of Andy's TV so we didn't have to read the subtitles. Instead, just Well, yeah, Vanessa Hudgens, she's still very attractive.
I feel like that would have made the movie better if we filled it
ever
in
since
as we went.
High School Musical, she stayed fit. I don't know what happened with her and Zac Efron, but he's in lots of shitty movies too, so I guess they're even. So they're in Belgravia with Sexy Dad and Lippy Liv, and they're gonna bake shit, and they set up their station. And there's a redheaded rival who comes in, Brianna. We'll get to her later, but she's totally macking on Sexy Dad, and I guess she won this last year.
Yeah, which I get though, because Sexy Dad is just uber sexy.
Sexy Dad oozes sexual. Like if he weren't a sous chef, he would be on a calendar somewhere.
I'm pretty sure he is on a calendar somewhere.
Yeah, he's on a calendar somewhere. He's got like a chef's hat covering his dong.
He's in real life. He's a part-time firefighter, full-time fire.
He totally moonlights as a stripper. That actually explains so much about his character.
That's the darker timeline of this movie.
He keeps walking into the kitchen where Stacy's working because, by the way, he definitely has a crush on Stacy. But yeah, we're coming to that. Don't worry.
No, he got over it.
I bet like so many times he goes into their kitchen at the bake shop and he's like, "Is something burning?" And she goes, "No, fuck off, Dad." And then he's like, "Oh, I was gonna do my strip routine to Rihanna." And then he's like, "Oh," and then Liv's like, "Fuck, Dad, we need to work on this because I want a new mommy." Again, this is the punch-up version. But
Saucy.
They're in Belgravia and they're walking around the Christmas village. There's ballet dancers, and the same old man who was in Chicago.
Well, they're going shopping. Because they go to the house where they're being put up because it's all expenses paid, which included bringing your kid if you go to this.
I'm telling you, she's their 8-year-old bakery slave. But she does not compete in the competition because I think it is illegal in Belgravia.
There you go. That's how they got her in. They said this is our third.
But we
partner.
need her for the prep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how they get her in. So it's all expenses paid. There's space for 3 at this place, and they're like, well, we're going to be here for Christmas, so let's get stockings. So that's how they end up. They go shopping, and who turns around at the register? But it's now it's going to be super creepy old guy from Salvation Army, because those eyebrows keep following
But you might be fooled, as Andy's wife was, into thinking he's a different old man, because this time you see him, he's wearing glasses and has gel in his hair.
And I had already mentioned to Evan, when Evan informed me that this was Vanessa Hudgens working with Vanessa Hudgens. I was like, do they just put glasses on her, and laughed about it. And Allison was there and heard that. So for her to be shocked when they did put glasses on someone who was playing multiple roles was a little bit off.
I was like, you're the worst movie watcher. We can't. Allison got over it. I think she hated this more than we did, actually.
Yeah.
But she's talking to him. He's like, how could I have been in Chicago last week? You were there only earlier today. That's not how travel works. What? And then she's like, okay. I guess that makes sense. And then they're setting up their baking station for the competition, they're setting up a full 2 days ahead of time. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was 2 days ahead of time. So they just have that space
They
locked
have
down.
this space in a very large studio, and they set up, for some reason, 2 days before. It's unclear why, but...
That'd be 2.5 3 days even, because they set up, then they did the switch for 2 days, and then they did the thing. So it was 4 days at a time.
Yeah.
They set up 4 days early, and they're just in this huge studio being used. All right,
whatever, man. But they're setting up, and rival redhead is trying to mac on Sexy Dad, and Sexy Dad is like, excuse me, I don't have a penis. And then
I only have abs.
I'm made entirely of abs. And then Vanessa Hudgens is like, bitch, I'll cut you. And then the redhead
seems like
rival,
a common line for her in the punched up version.
You know what? I'm totally improvising here, and it would still be a better movie if that were her every line. Can you imagine? I'll cut a bitch. A redhead rival spills coffee on Vanessa Hudgens, and for some reason,
that's basically assault. If it's still hot, that's the dangerous.
It totally hits her apron, and for some reason, even though it's an apron, she has to go change her apron. Even though the whole point of aprons is that they get dirty when you're in the kitchen. But she goes backstage in the studio.
Also, why were they wearing aprons for setup? They weren't actually baking anything. I don't understand.
Andy,
sorry.
I need you to accept the Christmas fucking magic, all right?
Apologies, Evan. I've learned my lesson.
Because I'll cut a bitch.
And Vanessa.
So she goes backstage ostensibly to find a new apron, and who does she bump into? But the Duchess of Montanaro. And we have learned already that the Prince of Belgravia is engaged to be married to the Duchess of Montanaro, and their wedding is scheduled for New Year's Day.
Creepy Salvation Army dude / seller at the Christmas market told them that.
Creepy old man gives a lot of... He's big on
exposition.
Thank you.
Nailed it.
That Basil Exposition, isn't that his name in Austin Powers?
Yeah, that's
what I kept thinking. I was trying to call him that. Basil Exposition. Okay, and they're like, "Oh my god, we look exactly alike." And then
and they turn and look at a mirror, which they just happen to find a mirror right there.
And Andy pointed this out too, where they do awkward over the shoulder shots, and there's a very terrible body double involved, and like definitely taller and at least 10 pounds heavier than Vanessa Hudgens.
Yeah, it's. I was just like, those are her
there's
shoulders.
Some bad wigs, and it's just really, really bad. And thankfully, they don't do that later in the film, or at least if they do,
they seem to stop. I think.
Yeah, it's not as noticeable. Here, it's extremely.
They did a lot of
terrible
close-up shots of and I was like, that doesn't.
I was like, I'm so distracted by these fake shoulder pads. What's happening? But they're talking, and then so the Duchess of Montanaro says, "Oh, you and I should chat about the cake for my wedding." And Stacy is like, "Sure, yeah, I'll cut a bitch." And then
I'll cut a cake.
I'll cut a cake too. Whatever. I cut lots of shit, man. I'm wild. And then they meet up later.
Well, she invites her to come, and she was like, we'll have to talk, darling.
Yeah,
because she's
darling, your people will call my people. Yeah, okay.
And she swears her to secrecy. She's like, no one can know. So that sets up the beginning of betrayal.
It would for no reason, and for some reason, Stacey's like, okay, no one can know that you're getting married, and there will be a cake at the wedding. But I think people know about the wedding.
So she goes back to Sexy Dad and says,
I'm gonna go shopping for a new apron.
Yeah,
I couldn't find one.
He's like, okay, I'm just a dad. I'm gonna take my lippy live, and we'll go to Christmas Village.
And
Evan for those at home, Evan did a little jig while he said that, and it was delightful.
That's what I need to nail this dude's little hole.
He's got a whole.
I'm a sexy dad, and I'm definitely not a stripper on the weekends.
He's got a whole shimmy going here.
I don't know what you're talking about, pectoral muscles.
And then so they leave, and she goes and meets up with the Duchess, whose name is Margaret.
Margaret, yeah.
Margaret
of
What's up, Margot? Margot of Martinero. Not Montenegro. Montenero?
Montanaro.
It's a bunch of made-up places that Netflix didn't even bother to show a map of. Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah, they didn't even bother. They should have showed some of that.
That would have been cool.
They could have that fake backstory.
They could have at least done that Indiana Jones thing where they show the plane traveling over the map with the red line behind it, because there's really no indication of where this Belgravia place is.
Yeah, no idea.
But that's why I'm convinced it's just Canada in disguise.
Yeah.
Justin Trudeau is like, let's try something new. He's like, the U.S. has really freestyling it lately. I think we can mix it up, guys. He's like, yeah, did you know weed is legal here now? It's fucking rad, dudes.
Well, so they could have. What sort of confused me is if they had shown some of the stuff about the country, we would have known some of the backstory that. So then, when Vanessa's character, whichever one it is, makes some incorrect statements about Bulgaria,
Belgravia,
or Montanaro, then it could have been funnier if they had said
if we actually had any knowledge of what was supposed to be the cultural norms in these places.
Yeah, so she's winging it later, and it's
she's well, the horses in Montanaro are much shorter. And it's well, are they?
Yeah, I have no
it could be an island populated solely by pygmy horses. I don't know.
Stunted pygmy
stunted little pygmy animals. Actually, that sounds adorable. It's like the world's biggest petting zoo. It's just this little island.
In order to ride them, you have to ride four of them. Just
stack them up together. So they're talking, and the Duchess says, I want us to switch places, darling, because I'm marrying into Belgravia, and I have yet to get to know any of the common people.
And well, she's never been a normal girl either. That's the other part of it. I don't know if she was trying to meet the people. I think
Either way, it's a bullshit reason.
Yeah, she's just super rich, I guess, and is like, let me just be a peasant folk for a minute.
Yes, you're wearing a hat that says Chicago and blue jeans. I think I would like to dress like you for 2 days.
Feel the rough texture against my thighs.
So, and Stacy is like, yeah, let's do it. And then
yeah, I was like, what?
She's like, I hope I don't have to cut any bitches. But they switch places, and I think part of the deal is that Stacy won't have to talk to the prince because he's gonna go talk about affairs of state in Spain or something like that.
So he's got a plan.
But they flirt briefly while she's in a shimmering gold nightgown and slippers with heels.
Yeah, she wears stilettos the entire time.
Yeah, this is true, and what's the Duchess do? Margot goes back to the house with Sexy Dad, and she says everything is super. She does this really flat American accent.
Yeah, well, the whole thing is just so weird because it's obvious. The British thing is so forced.
Yes,
and so it's just when she shifts back to what she's comfortable with, it's like that feels much more real. But it's just like. She does the super fake breathy British. Oh, so wonderful to see you.
Tea, crumpets. That's my elephant impression. But
elephant.
The British elephant. Margot goes to talk to Sexy Dad, and she does a lot of finger guns.
Yeah,
a lot of finger guns when she's talking to people.
Is all about the finger guns,
and she also says super duper and super a lot. And then meanwhile, Stacy's back at the palace, sleeping in the huge 4-post bed, and she has like a weird butler lady, who
was basically raised
has basically raised the Duchess of Montenaro. Mm-hmm. Since she was a child, and I also think is a little bit in love with her.
Yeah, there's some tension.
There's some weird, because at one point, Stacy says, "Oh, so you must really care about her," and the woman says, "I would do anything for the Duchess," which for the next 2 days means I would do anything for you. And it's like, oh damn, girl, keep it together up here.
Cutting a bitch.
Definitely that. And then she wakes up the next morning, she goes and has awkward tea with the prince's parents, and who walks in but the prince. And she's like, I thought you would be in Spain, where it rains on the plain. And again, this is a punch-up version. He goes, nah, decided to stick around because I got a wedding to plan, and shit, I haven't done anything for that. Fuck. And her parents like, quiet, yes. And he's like, I thought I would spend these 2 days with my bride-to-be and really get to know you. And
I have to say, Evan, viewer, listener, Evan's doing a great job of describing this to you. I am just, I'm envisioning the movie as he's going through it, and I just hate that I'm reliving it. I hate it. Don't do it. Don't. This is a bad watch.
It is, what is an hour and 41 minutes?
We stopped twice to check.
It's an hour and 1 minute. And that's 100 minutes too long.
We stopped twice to check out
the trailer. In fact, is too long. I think that's like 2.5. But yeah, he's like, I've arranged for the man in the stables to get 2 horses ready for us, and she says, "Oh yes, super." I don't know.
Or
what she
says splendid.
She might say splendid. Yeah. And he goes, oh, yes, it is splendid.
No, she tries to get out of it at first, and he goes, well, you were a competitive rider. She's like, oh, yeah. Yes, I am, shit.
And then she says how nice the weather is, and the dad's like, only if you like frostbite. And they go ride horses, and she's in, she does a flip rich people horse riding clothes. Yeah. She tries to get on the horse, because it's not clear if she's ridden one before or not.
Yeah.
And then she falls off the thing, immediately. She tries to launch herself up into the saddle and just keeps going over the side.
Yeah, and it's like she's never even seen a movie about horses. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like it was.
No,
it was like
I
a
will say,
forced laugh line.
I will say this: I have cried, not an exaggeration, every time I have interacted with a horse. I think they are far too big and far too smart. That's why I'm
I think
really
they're far too stupid.
That's
We
why
had
I'm
discussions
really
about
sold on pygmy horses in Montanaro because they seem like the size I'm ready for. But then she gets on the horse properly and she's like, oh, I'm actually quite good at this. Netflix, thank you for the horseback riding lessons. Yes. And they go ride and he wipes a snowflake from her eyelashes. Meanwhile, Margot and Sexy Dad are out doing shit and falling in love. And Olivia quickly figures out that Stacy is no longer Stacy, but is in fact Margot because Stacy and Lippy Liv have a secret handshake, which we somehow see 3 times throughout the film, which it never needed to happen.
Once in the beginning, once when Margot messed it up, and then once at the end to prove who was who.
So Stacy is a baker, as we've mentioned, and Margot's first day on the job as Stacy, she is busy burning pancakes and toast, which is like. And so, but to test her, Lippy Liv is like, secret handshake? Because this is very suspicious. And I'm a precocious 8-year-old played by a 12-year-old. And did you also know that I'm auditioning for Encyclopedia Brown? And actually, it would be really cool if they did an Encyclopedia Brown reboot with like a girl as Encyclopedia Brown.
All right.
But he would still be such an insufferable ass. Like, well, Sexy Dad, I have to solve this crime for you before dessert. So clear away my dishes. It's time for me to do my whole Poirot thing.
Oh my god.
Anyway,
so they do this. So this really irked me too. They do this the handshake that she doesn't know, and somehow Margot half figures it out. I thought
Margot actually does a very good job with this
even,
involved secret handshake, but somehow Lippy Liv knows the truth.
Yeah.
And then later, when Stacy calls Margot to be like, your fiance didn't go to Spain where it rains on the plane. And Margot's like, what?
Well, she isn't. Margot left the phone on the table. Lippy Liv saw the phone and said it was called from Stacy.
A call from Stacy. And she's
So this whole thing.
The call was coming from inside the house.
So this whole thing, though, would have gone awry immediately if Sexy Dad, had tried to call Stacy at any point during this 2-day period. There were moments where they were separated, and he didn't. He's like, "Where were you?" I was like, normally people call in that instance,
or text.
And it's
none of that happened. He's like, oops, I butt dialed you. And he looks at the screen of Margot's phone and she goes, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. Which is what my dad does when you tell him that he butt dialed you. He's like, no, I did not. I have never butt dialed anyone since last week. So they
butt dialed me once too.
He butt dials everyone in his phone at least once. It's how he shows his affection for people.
Accidental affection.
Yeah. The funniest was when he accidentally butt dialed his parents and they called him back and were like, it was a weird message you left.
Just a lot of background rustling and noises.
Yeah. Pocket sounds. Very strange. But Margot and Sexy Dad, they're vibing. Sexy vibing. Thank you next. Is that what the kids say? I don't know. Swipe right. They swipe right.
Okay.
Love is blind. Swipe right always. Actually, that's not bad advice for Tinder, but we'll get into that another time.
No, we won't. No, we won't.
Listen, then what's her name? Stacy. Also Vanessa Hudgens and Prince Charming are falling in love doing rich people shit, like buying toys for poor children and playing the piano for them. And also they go to a ball, but the ball sucks and they play Carol of the Bells together on the piano.
Because it's very obvious that while she's supposed to be an accomplished pianist, she's very obvious that she has no idea what she's doing. And then they're doing the duet, and she doesn't know how to play piano, and he shows her how to do it, and then she brings her other hand into it, like she's going rogue.
Miraculously, halfway through Carol of the Bells, which granted her part is not particularly difficult, but she learns how to play piano. It's a Christmas miracle. Also, creepy old man is back,
and he's back throughout this entire movie.
He comes back
followed by chimes. Always the chimes.
Again, don't drink every time you hear the chimes. It's a dangerous game. He's there, I guess, working as a butler, and Stacy.
He's been there as a butler, a gardener, like a like wait staff person, just sort of on the
Yeah.
edge of things.
Yeah.
What else was he? He's a shopkeeper, and then he's a Salvation.
He's probably
There's
a
5 roles.
homeless man in the background of one scene, but you just can't see him.
We didn't look at the credits, but I really wanted to see him listed for each entry.
Yes, I would have loved that. That would
Old
have been
Man
my
1,
favorite part of the
Old
movie.
Man 2, Old Man 3, Old Man 5. Just same name.
But the Duchess, played by Stacy, goes out into the cold in like a very lovely gown, but it's definitely not warm enough for how cold it's
Yeah, her
supposed
arms are
to
bare,
be.
and it's
arms
snow
are
on the
bare,
ground.
strapless, sweetheart neckline. I'm making that up. I know that's a thing though.
Oh, yeah,
It's a dress.
I heard the term.
It's a dress. And the prince is like, "Have you seen the Duchess?" And the creepy old man is like, "I believe she took a respite in the gazebo. Yes. Do you like my white gloves?"
Chimes.
chimes. And they go. They're in the gazebo. And do they kiss here? Or is that later?
You know what? It became a dull moment. They danced.
Yeah, I think I was
there
in the
were
bathroom
chimes.
because Andy and I were like looking for any excuse to leave the room and just leave the movie playing. Like, do you need another beer? It'll take me 15 minutes to grab it. I'm gonna go and hide in the bathroom for a little while. Don't bother me.
I have to say, after my third 3.5 beers in, this movie became slightly more palatable.
So yeah, you know what? Play the chime drinking game until you see the old man for the second time, and then drink water. Okay, gang, fam, I love you.
That'll keep safe.
And
Keep
then
safe this holiday
it'll
season.
just be a safe trip through the rest of this terrible movie. But meanwhile, the prince has like a butler, attendant. It's unclear his role in the prince's life.
He's skeezy guy that's been hired on.
He's definitely the chauffeur, but he also seems to do basically everything else.
And they give him everything else because people
no
hate
one
him?
likes him.
I don't know why
but,
he's there and no one likes him.
Yeah, I mean, as Stacy says, I'd cut that bitch. He's a total pant load, as my mother would say. And he's like, something is off with the Duchess. And
Well, the king is initially suspicious, and he tells him to start tailing her, and he does in like the creepiest manner possible.
Absolutely
And
creepiest.
it's just like, why are you? Like, you could just look from afar. You don't need to like get up on her and just start talking to her. And be like,
Yes, it is like the old man foretold. I just must be conspicuous, but also not noticeable, and watch everything.
He was like, guys, I just need to be in the scene, and they're like,
Yeah.
all right, fine, you can talk to her for a minute.
I like to think that he was like, my agent promised me. And they're like, fine, we'll give you like a fucking scene. You'll carry some laundry or shit. Whatever, dude.
Give you a crappy villain role, fine.
Yeah, and so he is seeing all of this, and then by the end of their 2-day switch, and I'm skipping a lot because
Yeah.
we don't have time for that nonsense,
I'm
ladies and
emotionally
gentlemen.
spent already. Like,
At the end of their 2 days,
everyone's in love with everyone.
So Margot's in love with Sexy Dad, Stacy's in love with the Prince, and the
And Villain Dude has
Duchess-
gotten photos of them of the
yeah.
two
So the
Margot
Duchess
Stacy
returns to her chambers, and she gives Stacy back her Chicago hat and jeans.
together. She wore that back for some reason. Like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
you'd wear like you only brought in that very large suitcase. They only brought
And
3 outfits.
even though you're coming to fake Canada, you didn't bring a coat, so tough titties. And they chat in the window,
Right.
and creepy dude is outside with
being
a
really creepy.
telephoto lens, snapping multiple photographs of the two of them chatting. Granted, one of them is in a nightgown, the other one's fully clothed, but it's still extremely creepy.
Yeah.
And he manages to slip and fall off a balcony with a normal sized railing.
Yeah.
But
Again, another attempt at a laugh line, I guess.
he lands in the snow, and he's okay because he
Should be dead.
He props himself up to take more photos. Then he goes, "Owie," and then and then scene. But then it's time for the baking competition. Stacy proves she's real to Lippy Liv by nailing the handshake.
Yep. And making breakfast without burning things.
Also, so this is where Redhead Rival comes back, because after you see these
I don't even
these
know why
photos,
she's in that movie. I don't know.
after you see these photos being taken, you see her inside the movie studio
Wearing all black.
where they set up all the stuff days ago. She's
The
wearing
same
leather
routine.
gloves, a coat, and like
But
she's,
her face is revealed, so we know who the bad guy is. Like,
yeah.
It's just
And you know what she does? She really fucks their shit up. She goes to their KitchenAid stand mixer, And rather than just unplug it, she cuts the plug.
But even that made me so angry.
And then we're in the baking competition, and
They've
literally
already baked like 5 cakes.
It's a 5-hour competition, and we're in like the last 5 minutes of this thing, and all of a sudden, that's when they noticed that their stand mixer was sabotaged.
I was like, they would have used that mixer.
If you've ever watched Nailed It, you know they use those stand mixers all the damn time.
Yeah.
So
use that first.
hashtag Goodwatch Junior. Go see Nailed It. New episodes are out December 7th on Netflix. Nicole Byers is amazing. So is the Jacques dude. But anyway, yeah, they clearly don't know how to bake cakes over at Netflix. Yeah. They need to go watch Nailed It, because like they would know. Oh, they would have realized their KitchenAid mixer was broken like literally hours ago.
Yeah, like first 30 seconds. Hey guys, something's wrong with ours.
And
another one.
But all it does is that she's like, "Oh, how am I supposed to puree these raspberries?" And he's like,
"Use a food processor."
And her,
oh no, sorry, use the.
And her sous chef is like, "By hand, I guess." And
which still wouldn't be that. Like that's easy. It's not.
Yeah,
difficult.
it's like I was like mortar and pestle. I was like, this is not rocket science. It's fucking raspberries. You need them chopped up. Like, just do it. I was like, it's what's unrealistic is that you haven't used your stand mixer until now. And then they win the competition. And then meanwhile, back at the palace, creepy butler tries to give the photos he took to the king, but the queen intercepts him. And he
this
says,
is him getting his comeuppance for being a ski.
Yeah, he's like, it's really a delicate matter. I must give them directly to the king. And the queen is like, well, any business that concerns the king also concerns me, Niles, or whatever his fucking name is.
I don't know.
He's like Niles
ball.
From Frasier, but in the dark timeline.
Yeah.
He ended up in fucking Belgravia. And he's like, but I'm afraid. And she goes, it really would be sad for you to lose your job so close to the holidays. It's like, ooh, she cut a bitch. And so she sees the photos, and she's like, so they're clones. Or I don't know what she thinks. I guess she immediately figures it out or something.
And then I guess, so we don't, like, I don't know why they
skip
this.
all of the interesting tidbits.
Like, the reveal, so apparently, because there's a conversation then between the queen and Margot and the prince and the king, and she's like, well, I can't go to this baking competition, you need to go. And Margaret is like, oh snap, this is gonna be a problem. And she goes for a walk, just like avoids the conversation like a real adult. But the king like looks at the queen and nods. So the queen like thought about things, was okay with it, didn't tell her son, set this thing up for them to reveal everything, but the king knows. Like, it's just so weird.
But then the Duchess does tell the prince, and they rush over to the baking competition because they're both in love, and they got to get with Sexy Dad and Stacy ASAP. Mm-hmm. Also, Sexy Dad and Stacy win, and I don't know what they win, but they win. There's a really awkward scene with one of the judges, like talking about the puree and how it's not what she expected. Yeah, it's like someone's daughter is banging on the doors. Can we give them something? And it's very strange and unnecessary. Yeah. But then everything works out where Margot tells Sexy Dad that she's in love with him, and it takes him an annoyingly long time to put all this together. He's like, but you're the Duchess, and she goes, and you're Sexy Dad. And the prince at literally at one point says, this might be a lot to take in, but she's trying to tell you she loves you. And and he goes, oh. He's like, well, she looks just like Stacy. And so then the little girl runs in and she's like, kiss her, daddy.
Which is actually because Evan had been yelling it like in all the previous scenes. Kiss her, daddy.
Kiss her, daddy.
And it didn't happen. And then she said it, and it was perfect.
It was amazing. It was all my dream. It was easily the best part of the film for me. And then meanwhile, Stacy's like, I can't marry the prince. He's a prince, and I'm a baker from Chicago. And she runs, for some reason, back into the studio.
Into amongst all the people.
I don't know if they're still filming or if they were ever filming.
They were definitely filming. There was a guy with a camera. There's a guy with a camera.
Yeah. And we know that means filming. And so the prince proposes and says, let's get married.
Next
1
Christmas.
year from now at Christmas. And she says, of course I'll marry you, darling.
To which I respond, 2 days. It's been 2 days. What are you people doing?
You know, sometimes you just know, Andy. Other times you're watching a Netflix film.
And you know you should turn it off.
Yeah. And before we get to the end, do you want to know who our sponsor is this week?
Well, first I just want to say so that was Netflix's Princess Switch. Was that what the name of it? Princess Switch.
The Princess Switch.
The Princess Switch. The punched up version name is
Princess Bitch.
The Princess Switch. I'll cut a bitch.
Princess Switch. I'll cut that bitch. So our sponsor.
Please.
You've heard of Dollar Shave Club. Have you heard of Dollar Bathe Club? Now, for the gentleman on the go, you just need a little soap, a little dry shampoo. You give them $1 every so often, and they ship these things to you. They didn't give me a lot of details because it's a very new service.
They ship a guy to you, and he'll bathe you for $1.
No, you send them $1, and in the mail every couple weeks, I think. Let's go with that. They send you a little tiny bar of soap and a little tiny bottle of dry shampoo. And they say, don't forget to splash some water in your face because $1 doesn't cover face soap. And if you go to dollarbatheclub.com/badwatch promo / this is not a real promo
.com.
.geocities. Yes. You can get your first month of Dollar Bathe Club.
Which is just one instance of it.
Yeah, it's like a couple baths. I almost said a couple bathes.
They're bathes singular. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, I thought of this before we recorded our last episode and then completely forgot about it until now. So I'm really struggling with some of the details of this fake sponsor. Anywho, the movie ends. Stacy didn't get to cut anyone, but she really wanted to. And she marries the prince, and she tosses the bouquet at the wedding, and who catches it but Margot?
It falls directly in her arms. She doesn't even need to move.
Yeah.
No one predicted that ending. No one saw that coming at all.
No one did at all. And then it kind of seems like Skeezy Butler and Lady in Waiting, from the former Margot Lady in Waiting, they're like in a thing now. It's really unclear, but
there was a weird tension
they're
there, too,
clearly
the whole
each
time.
other's date at the wedding, I think, is what we're supposed to get. It's weird.
Felt weird.
It feels very weird because I'm still pretty sure she's a lesbian, and there's nothing wrong with that. But like, Skeezy Butler's definitely a dude. So, that was this movie.
Oh, that was bad.
Good watch. So I'll let Andy go first because we've been through a lot this evening, and we're gonna do it again tomorrow.
So my good watch, since there's a baking theme, I want to recommend to everyone the Great British Bake Off or Great British Bake Show on.
It's
on
one of
Netflix.
those.
Something like that. It's excellent. It's the most wholesome TV you'll watch. I love it so much. Mary Berry for the first couple seasons, and now they've got Prue and Paul Hollywood as the judges, and it's delightful. I highly recommend it.
I have only seen maybe 15 minutes total of this show, and I can concur that it's very charming and wholesome.
There are no chimes to be found anywhere. I love it.
It's great. Yeah, and they mixed the audio properly for that one. But Paul Hollywood...
He's the most negative, calm, delivery, negative person. It's actually all right.
It does. Every time I've seen him, it does seem like, I want more Simon Cowell is what he's getting from the producers. And he's just like, I'm fucking Paul Hollywood and I'm British, goddammit. But yeah, go watch Great British Bake Show. My good watch, I forgot what the segment was called. Dear Jesus. It's an anime, actually, called Ajin, Demi-Human. And it is also on Netflix. And it is a really cool twist on what I think is a cool twist on the superhero story, wherein there's a subset of humanity called Ajin who they cannot die. And what's interesting about this is they're very rare, but you can only know if you're an Ajin when you die initially. And it's really cool. It is very violent TVMA. So if you're not into that and you're not into anime, don't watch it. But if you are into those things, I found it very good. And it's on Netflix.
I think I've seen like 1 or 2 episodes of it. I don't think I've went through and finished it, but I did enjoy what I saw.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Also nailed it on Netflix. That's a real good watch recommendation. Please go watch it. It makes me so happy. And we're on Twitter. Did you guys know? Andy, did you know?
Andy did not know.
I think our Twitter bio says, this is Bad Watch, co-hosted by @EvanWStoner, which is my Twitter handle, and Andy, who is not on Twitter.
Because I'm not with it.
Yeah, but you can find us there. We tweet stuff. And
what do we tweet?
Well, our
Stuff.
Oh, but we have a special profile photo for December where it's our typical crab, but he's wearing a little Santa hat.
Thank you, Evan.
So
That's delightful.
He's Andy.
That guy's Evan.
And this is Bad Watch.
Thanks for listening.
Okay, don't watch The Princess Switch or I'll cut a bitch.